Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're going to recap what happened this week in cannabis from December 14th to December 20th. So before we jump in, if at any point you're enjoying this video and you learned something, please make sure you leave a like and a thumbs up, as it really helps out my channel, and I do appreciate it. And of course, if you want to learn more about the cannabis industry, and develop your understanding so that you can take advantage of this generational opportunity before the US legalizes, I will be covering and doing 2 videos a week until that does happen. So feel free to subscribe so that you don't miss any new videos. And lastly, if you are Canadian and you've yet to open up your self-directed TFSA, there are 2 links below to Questrade and Wealthsimple Trade, which are Canada's top 2 discount brokers. If you open your self-directed TFSA through them, you get a bit of free money for doing so through those links, and you can always reach out to me and I'll help educate you so that you can get started on the right foot and navigate that platform. So without further ado though, the Ontario Cannabis Store has recently announced they've released a quarter review from their Q2, July 1st to the end of September 2020. Now, I have done a video previously on their Q1, which was April to the end of June, and I'll put a link in the description to that below so that you can watch that and just sort of reference the growth over time. But this is a big deal again because in Canada, most of our growth will come from Ontario, where 14.5 million Canadians live. But the problem was in the first 6 months of legalization, Ontario only opened 25 stores to apparently feed 14.5 million people. That's not an effective way to do business. So we're going to get into the progress that's been made. But again, it all starts with Ontario and Canada. So this is a great sign. We're also going to go through the Canadian sales numbers and then back into the US to highlight just sort of any development. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to get through in this video. But I just want to point out is that as of September 30th, 2020, Ontario only had 183 stores. But as of right now, December 20th, 2020, we have 280. How have we had 100 increase, or how have we had another 100 open already that quickly? Well, if you haven't watched any of the past videos, Ontario has announced that actually at the end of September, they're going from opening 20 stores a month to 40 stores a month. And now they've also finally gotten their head out of their asses, realized and said on December 8th that they're going to open 40 stores to 80 stores a month. So within 3 months, we're going from 20 a month to 80 a month, which means by December 2021, next year, we're going to have over 1,300 stores, and 1,000 stores will be added at the pace of 80 a month plus what we have now. So that's what we got to look forward to, but it's more important than they do this now than ever, because 64% of people in Ontario are still buying cannabis from illegal sources. Why? Because they don't have a store close by that allows them to go buy cannabis at a very cheap price comparatively to the black market, but actually know what they're investing in. I think that's the pivotal aspect and why you need to get stores where people are. And as of right now, though, they've grown. From last quarter was 25%, now 36.2%. So a lot more people in Ontario are buying from legal sources because they have access. All you need is access, and that's how you eliminate the black market. So it's great to see, but these next stores over 2021 are going to make a massive difference. And I think we're going to see the most growth, at least from spring next year into mid 2022. I mean, it's just going to keep growing from there. But this is just good for investors who get in early. It's good for government tax revenue, municipalities. It's good for everybody. Now, let's look at how many grams were sold. 25.8 million grams from July 1st to September 30th. And look at the difference between sales and grams sold through retail stores versus through the OCS, sorry. So obviously people would rather go to a retail store and not buy from the government. I think people probably have some feelings against how the government rolled this entire process out, and it wasn't very well done, too tightly regulated, and that caused, the bad reputation of this legalization rollout, unfortunately. But good thing is we have smoothed out those cranks and we're getting better as we go. But if we look at the total sales for this 3-month period, 204 million, 173 million coming from retail stores. Again, these are brick and mortar stores that a Canadian opens up as an entrepreneur and then employs other Canadians to work there. It's good for everybody. And then the OCS brought in 30.5 million. Why, again, private business usually always does it better than government. But the good thing for the OCS is that they're getting better at having more a variety of products to supply, and they are increasing the amount that they're selling on average, so good for them. Now, big picture though, of course, Ontario, with the most people, and as stores are opening, they are leading. The interesting is that Ontario was quite low below this point because Alberta, a province of 4 million people, did get it right from the beginning. They opened 500 stores right away. They got it. Now, one thing I just wanted to point out is that they start this from April of Q2, but I have the spreadsheet here, and what they don't account for is the abysmal start that Ontario had because they only opened so few stores. But the good thing is yes, if you start from April 2019, it goes up from 19 million to 22 million to 25, and of course, in here they're adding them all up over time. as we can see, the growth is increasing as Ontario opens more stores. Nonetheless, and population is always going to matter. It's going to matter in the US, it's going to matter in Canada, and Alberta has 4.5 million people. Quebec has 8 million people, but again, they've got a problem with few stores as well. They need to eventually see what Ontario is doing, and I hope they will. Most likely they will, and then they'll start to open more as well, because Quebec has 8.8 million people. There's a huge market there that's not being tapped. British Columbia, again, it's more about getting access to where the people are, but the more you go down through the provinces, the less Canadians live there, and ultimately you just want to focus on where the money is, or sorry, where the amount of people living are so that they can spend that money. But the Ontario share of recreational sales, again, leads the way, then Alberta, Quebec, kind of going through what we saw. And this is just people enjoying their experience on the Ontario Cannabis Store, not that important. Sales data, this is what matters, folks. And again, leading the way from July to September, dried flower takes up 59.60% of sales, vapes 15%, and pre-rolls 12%. This is the most important factor to look through, these three, because these are selling the most. So whichever brands are dominating the dried flower, vapes, and pre-rolls, they will dominate the sales. And again, I mean, the only way to say it as a Canadian, my view, again, this is not advice, just my view, but the Aphria, investing in Aphria or Tilray, as that merger is going to come together, or Village Farms International. Besides those two, I would not invest in any other Canadian company. That's just my opinion. And again, if you hold long-term, chances are you will see gains realized over time from some of these smaller companies. But in Canada, I just see consolidation coming with the smaller companies, just because you're not going to be able to compete with the top ones that have dominated and decided for which markets to enter and accumulate. And again, dried flower, vapes, pre-rolls, we're going to see in the next bit, has been pretty much achieved by Aphria, which is now Aphria Tilray, Redecan, which is a private company, so you can't invest in it, and then Village Farms International. And hey, edibles are increasing their way up. They did sell 6 million at the retail stores, but beverages, this is the unfortunate thing, and it's not even the company's fault necessarily. I mean, Canopy maybe didn't want to put as much money as they did into it, but nonetheless, government regulations really didn't help, and that is why this area is suffering so big. But as an investor, you got to focus where the money's being made. And if we jump through, this is just basically everyone wants high THC. They want to, if they're going to smoke cannabis, they want to feel a little bit stoned, I guess. That's what that's what we're saying there. So, oh yeah, it's not here. This is the page I wanted to get to, but I'll quickly go through here just to not skip it. Main thing is that the most popular package sale is the 3.5 grams. So imagine if you're going to buy cannabis, 3.5 gram is where you're paying $20 to $35. It's an easy party pack or whatnot when you're going to see people. And then you get into some of the larger wholesale offerings and then the smaller pre-roll offerings. These are the most popular, but the good thing is to see with beverages, concentrates, edibles, topicals, and vapes is that the amount of sales is increasing over time in each category, in each of the 3 months. So that's something very important to see, because again, as more stores open, there's more people are going to have access to buy these. And just why I'm saying, again, Aphria and Tilray combined together, Redecan or Village Farms International, is if you want to look at the dried flower, who's running it? Pure Sun Farms, Village Farms International, Redecan, Daily Special, which is Aurora, actually. Good Supply, I just personally wouldn't invest in Aurora because the management's so terrible, but Good Supply. And then we actually finally see Tweed in their first ranking for dried flower. So good for them for improving their quality to get up there. And again, dried flower, again, Pure Sun Farms, which is Village Farms International, Redecan, Good Supply, which is Aphria, Daily Special, which is Aurora, Riff, which is also Aphria. If we go to rapes, Redecan, I don't know the brand name behind Foray or Figure. Good Supply is also Aphria. Main thing is because I try to only focus on the companies I'm invested in. I ignore the rest, really, but can only hold so much of my bandwidth. But the good thing to see here with vapes, Good Supply's got 20% of the retail store market that is selling a ton. So we should see some good numbers in January when Aphria releases those earnings. Then we've got Redecan. Canica is actually owned by Tilray, which is funny, so it's nice to see that there. And then if we go to pre-rolls, though, this is where Aphria just dominates. Good Supply, Riff, Soleil, Redecan, Edison is Organigram. But yeah, again, Good Supply, Redecan. So these are obviously, if this is where the most sales are going, you want to own the companies that own the brands that are selling the most in these areas. That's what I look for. Now, pricing, because the Ontario Cannabis Store has been able to bring the prices down quite a bit. Retail stores are still quite behind the black market, but again, the main thing is that the OCS is kind of in control of how they can price it, because the LPs have to then send the cannabis to the OCS, and then the OCS decides what they want to do, whether they want to sell it to the retail stores or sell it themselves. So that's where they have the advantage, that they can sell it for much, much cheaper. But again, people don't mind paying more than the illegal market as long as there's a store close by. That's it. That's what we know about humans. It's always worked that way, and it will always work that way. So as more stores come, that's a good sign. This sales velocity price per bucket, it seems as if once a day they're selling out of their top selling stuff, which is a good thing to see. Now, yeah, we get down to the retail locations. Again, store location is so important. If people have access, then more cannabis is going to come into the legal market from the black market. So this is just the Ontario Cannabis Store reporting on how they're making small adjustments and making their improvements, which is great. But again, that's just going to come with more stores and with time, because yes, of course, the more stores you open, the less distance people have to drive to pre-existing ones. And then just as for access point, interesting to see that the amount of people visiting the OCS has gone down. Why? Because there's more stores in their area. I'm willing to bet that again, and it's just going to ring through all of the data. But at least the OCS is improving their ability to convert online. They're selling more per gram. They're getting higher orders. Increasing transactions, not necessarily through this quarter, and I do see them losing transactions as more retail stores open. It's not going to be a profitable business when people can just go access it from close by and they don't need to feel like they're giving the government more money than we already do as Canadians living in this expensive country. Now, nonetheless, supply, yeah, again, this is all just more or less OCS highlights. Last thing I wanted to point out, though, is that it's good to see this number still going up, because the reason this number decreased is because since more stores are opening, they are sending out more units, but less overall units to the same specific location. So as long as we're seeing this number continue to go up as more stores are expanding, that means these more stores are continuing to order more units because more people are coming because of access. So ultimately, great news for Ontario. And I'm just excited to see what's going to happen from, at the end of September, October into December. That will likely come out in the spring. But this was a very nice thing to see for the Ontario, or for the total Canadian recreational cannabis sales numbers. I want to actually jump back to the start of the year in January, so let's apply that. But from September to October, sales jumped $13 million in total. And again, this only reflects the expansion of 20 stores or so, because Ontario didn't announce the expansion of 20 to 40 stores until the end of September. So we're not even accounting for that or seeing that. So that, just as you can see the growth from January, we've gone from 154 million, October 270 million. So we haven't doubled it quite yet, but I do honestly believe that once, by December, we are going to double the amount. But what this does show us is that at least Ontario opening more stores does significantly increase the growth, because again, this is only accounting for 12 to 20 stores in this period. We haven't even seen the increase from 20 to 40, and we're seeing 60 million to 73 million to 77 million to 83 million. This makes me very excited, just again, long term, and especially 2021. That's when we're going to see the most growth with these stores. And just as cannabis around the world is becoming more normalized as the legit medicine that it is, the best we have, and just as, a way to relieve stress, deal with pain, and help you sleep. But the one thing I want to point out too is I've added up all these numbers. I made a video the other day, didn't end up posting it, but the run rate, Canada is on a run rate of $2 billion so far. In 2019, Canada brought in a total revenue of $1.2 billion in cannabis. As of right now, they're already on pace to bring in, as of October, they will bring in $2 billion. So, 2 more months of 270, they're going to double the amount of revenue they brought in 2019. And that is a very positive sign for any industry, regardless if the government rolled it out terribly or if stores were not allowed, enough stores were not allowed to open when they should have. Regardless, this does mean that from 2019, we're seeing 1.2 billion. In 2020, we're going to see 2.4 billion, maybe 2.6 billion, just based on the run rate we can expect by the end of the year. And that would lead into 2021 of, hopefully up to 3.5, 4 billion. Only time will tell with the expansion of stores, but that just makes me excited, and I wanted to report that because they came early. Usually these numbers are only announced on the 20th of the month. But yeah, so that was it for Canada. Great developments. Now let's jump into the US. And unfortunately, in these polls, this 538.com, it's scaring me a little bit because these Republican leaders have taken hold in the polls. Now again, polls aren't very important. It's just more of like a way to at least see how, what the chances of the Senate actually swinging Democrat on the January 5th vote and seeing the Senate swing blue. That would be huge. But again, we can't rely just on this solely. It's more or less just an indicator that we can hope for. It would obviously push things forward ahead, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still convinced that the market has spoken enough with, the percentage of landslide votes to legalize yes in all the states in the election. The American people want this, and the government's just going to have to start waking up, and we're going to get to that point next. But I just wanted to also point out that this new poll reveals that cannabis gifting is the holiday season's hottest consumer trend. Not the second or third hottest, it's the hottest consumer trend. And this is just the beginning. Do you plan on replacing alcohol consumption with cannabis at all this holiday season? 64% said yes. Replacing alcohol with cannabis. That's huge. 19 said unsure, and 16% said no. So the one thing that we do know is that 85% or 84% of the people might, whereas 15 will not at all. So it's like 15 are still so close-minded that they will not change their ways, but at least 84% of people are like, let's try something different, because why not, right? Because let's experience. And I think, which cannabis or cannabis-related product do you plan to gift as the season? Just goes to show that THC or cannabis, this industry, once it's a commodity, it's going to be so much more than just smoking, and it'd be adding it to different products. It's lifestyle. Anyways, not to get too ahead of myself, flower, edibles, pre-rolls, CBD products, vapes, all these different types of ways of distributing the same commodity, which is cannabis. And folks, every person is different, but over time you'll think people will find different ways that they can apply this to their life, because again, cannabis heals. It's the best overall drug we have on the planet. So I didn't want to spend too much time on this, just wanted to point that out because that's exciting, but you can grab the link below. And this is the good news that we saw this week. 3 years and one shouting match later, New Jersey lawmakers passed cannabis legalization. So, fantastic. 3 years after Governor Phil Murphy was elected, obviously they did finally get around to writing up a bill and voting on this in November. And the Democratic lawmakers finally passed a bill that sets the ground rules for the Garden State's stickiest new industry. These puns, eh? But so the main thing is that this has been done. This is huge. Arizona, as I covered in the video on Wednesday, they are working towards writing that bill up now and hopefully having the industry, or hopefully allowing store applicants to apply in January to allow sales in March. That's the goal. Or at least I think for the passing of the bill in March. I do not remember, correct me if I'm wrong. But the good thing about New Jersey is that at least this bill is going to be signed in the next coming days. And ideally, the sooner that they can get things going in New Jersey, the better. Because how many people live in New Jersey? 8.8 million. So this means in 2021, 8.8 million more people with money are going to have access to buy cannabis and increase the sales for any U.S. multi-state operators that are already in the state of New Jersey. So we don't necessarily know, it's too early to say when this will come in, but the good thing is that the bill will take effect January 1st, and then it's just a matter of, getting the regulations in place to let the industry start. Process will take months, but again, at least the bill's done. That's huge. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time running through these, but all I want to point out is that these are politicians that have realized what the people want and have decided to say that they are for changing, or they are for cannabis reform. Because, hey, as a politician, you've got to pay attention to what the people want, because you've got to run on them in order for you to get reelected. So I'm going to run through these quickly, not to go into detail, but South Carolina. Oh, not this stupid thing. South Carolina can legalize medical marijuana in 2021, Republican lawmakers say. Now, what is this really supposed to mean? Of course, South Carolina can legalize medical if they want. Any state can legalize it if they want. Obviously, this does bring awareness, but Republican lawmakers in South Carolina have pre-filed legislation to legalize medical cannabis in the state next year. That's great. How many people live in South Carolina? 5.1 million. Now, Pennsylvania. The governor here has called for legalizing cannabis as part of COVID economic recovery plan. Why? Because every state needs jobs and the tax revenue. And in Pennsylvania, they've already got medical cannabis, but what they're looking for is legalizing adult use. Okay? What's the population in Pennsylvania? 12.8 million. Then if we go to New York, the Dems, again, I mean, they were supposed to do it last year. I don't know why. They would have benefited tremendously had they done it. A lot of politicians don't have what we call guts and, sticking true to what they know. But New York is another big state, and once they see what happens in New Jersey, you know that they're going to follow. How many people in New York? 19.4 million. Then we heard from Connecticut. After all of these announcements, Connecticut would consider legalizing cannabis, says the governor. Now again, consider doesn't tell you much. We would consider doing something, doesn't mean you're going to do it. But again, it's more or less, let's see what New Jersey does, and then we can take action based on what New York and all these other states do. How many people are in Connecticut? 3.5 million. Another state, we had Rhode Island, will absolutely consider legalizing marijuana in 2021. I love this English, but cannabis legalization has a solid chance of advancing in Rhode Island. On top, now I believe Rhode Island also has medical, so that this would just be for adult use as well. Rhode Island, 1 million people added, and this is the most exciting one. Legalize it. Texas lawmakers begin pre-filing bills to decriminalize cannabis in the state. Texas would be massive because as cannabis is legal in some form in 38 states, Texas is not one of them yet. So many of these bills have been introduced, and I just like that the fact that this new governor understands that, like, yes, they will be facing tremendous budgetary shortcomings. They will need jobs, and, you know, ending prohibition just makes sense more than ever. And guess how many people live in Texas? 29 million folks. So I've done the math and added all of those numbers up. And if in 2021 these states were to actually follow their, you know, stick to their word, stay true, and take some sort of action to legalize it, that would give access to cannabis to 85 million people in the United States. 85 million people, you know, all they have to do is spend $10, and that's 850 million. All they have to do is spend 20. I'm not good at math. I can't do that in my head. I'm trying to just show off. I'm not going to try that. But it's a lot of money being spent because that's just 85 million people getting access to something they didn't have before. And throughout the history of time, people have always smoked cannabis. And, you know, those who have never tried it might realize that it has more healing properties than they thought. Some people might try it and they just won't like it and won't do it again. That's fine. It's just the personal freedom of choice. And folks, again, this is just why I want to show you that I think we are closer than ever. We still got to exercise patience, and a lot is riding on this vote. But, you know, just if it's money that you don't need, invest it and be patient. Just hold. I'm telling you, folks, this is going to be amazing when it does happen, and when it does happen, it's going to be very fast. So lastly, cannabis industry in Israel is preparing for legalization, the cannabis industry prepares for Israeli legalization. So they had worked on a bill. I don't recall whether they passed it or not, but they were estimating at least in 9 months that this would take place. And I'm not going to spend too much time on here until we get more developments. But yeah, as the country prepares to legalize recreational cannabis in the coming months. So I guess they did pass the bill and they were planning to legalize. I apologize because I go through so much data sometimes that I forget necessarily what exactly was done. But I just wanted to point one thing out of this article because yes, obviously the more we change this narrative and people start to realize that fundamentally just as a medicine, it's a better alternative to opioids. It's becoming more well known. But this is something I want to point out that I was reading. Weinstock believes these recent decisions are only the beginning of a massive shift in global attitudes toward cannabis. Yeah, no duh. Sooner than later would be great. But all the regulations are going to change from March in the whole world, she asserted. What? What? And then that's it. So I just wanted to point that out because that fascinates me. I don't know what's happening in March. Do you? So I found that quite interesting, but nonetheless, it's just good to see because Mexico, if they vote in February, they will be the third country behind Canada to legalize adult use. Then Israel would become the fourth. Maybe the U.S. would be the fourth or the fifth. It just depends on when they, what happens in the Senate, obviously in January, and then what does happen in 2021. But folks, regardless, the cannabis industry is only going to grow as New Jersey and Arizona do add, 8 plus 7. Oh, I didn't even mention Arizona is 7 million. So that is 15 million people this year being added to buy cannabis. And then all these 85 million will likely fall as dominoes in the next few years. And then that's just why getting in early and holding is so important. Anyways, folks, what do you think? Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, or if you're curious or have any questions, let me know. I want to start a discussion. And of course, if you enjoyed this, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I will be out with another video on Wednesday and back next Sunday for This Week in Cannabis. Hope you enjoyed, folks, and have a great weekend.